One of the first interesting facts about this targeting by Iran of Diego Garcia is that it is approximately 4,000 kilometers from Iran, and even the Iranian foreign minister said that their ballistic missile capability would only enable them to actually fire to a range of about 2,000 kilometers. So although the two ballistic missiles that they sent were unsuccessful, one of them dropped short and the other one was intercepted by a US warship, it does show that they have a capability to reach far further than perhaps we first estimated. One of the interesting facets, which we've been kind of predicting was going to happen, was that the United Kingdom would be drawn further into this conflict, despite what our Prime Minister Keir Starmer has stated, certainly by denying the US military the capability of using UK bases, and that would be UK exclusive bases, to support our allies. Now, in this instance, Diego Garcia is a shared base that is covered across a very small relative piece of land. It's the largest of the Chagos archipelago and is approximately 17 square kilometer miles, 14 kilometers in a long stretch, and at its widest 7 miles, but it contains approximately 4,000 personnel. And the vast majority of those are military personnel combined of both the US and the UK. So even if Iran claims that this was a targeted attack against US assets, we, by conjunction of sharing this particular operational base, which is a critical base for UK operations as well as US, brings us very fair and square into being targeted now that this is the second attack beyond that in Akatori in Cyprus. The one thing that we can certainly be certain of is that the Iranians are not entirely honest necessarily about what their capabilities are. And one of the things which has not been discussed a great deal was Mossad's, and that is Israeli Mossad's, own inventory estimation of Iran's holding of Shahed drones, which we've seen being utilized in the attacks against many of the Gulf states. And Mossad's own inventory check was about 80,000 of these that have been utilized. Now, we know that Iran has deployed various ballistic missiles, but within that armory, they've also deployed many Shahed drones that have been highly successful in wearing out, or if you like, expending some of the Gulf states' countermeasures, because a Shahed drone costs approximately £28,000 to build. The countermeasures can cost anywhere between $1 and $3 million, and each time they need to intercept one. So when we consider that although the US may have been highly successful in depleting much of that 80,000 inventory, there is probably still a considerable number that are being held. And as we've seen duplicated in the Ukraine, because the Shahed drone has been sold to Russia, we've seen mass swarms of drones being utilized in Ukraine. And that's something that we can't anticipate happening potentially to some of the Gulf states. And as a direct result of our targeting, albeit as a collaborative partner in Diego Garcia, this draws us closer into the fight, and we as the United Kingdom cannot believe that we are going to be exempt from any further attacks against UK assets, regardless of what our Prime Minister says in terms of not wishing to engage. In terms of the fact that the Iranians claimed that their ballistic missiles only had a range of 2,000 kilometers, and yet they targeted with two ballistic missiles, at Diego Garcia in the Chagos, and that is 4,000 kilometers, we cannot discount that they may have within their arsenal the capability to potentially strike at the heart of the UK. It's a pretty critical location. The fact that one of their missiles dropped short may be that they were overambitious. However, it does show the degree of desperation in terms of what they were planning to do or what they were hoping they could achieve. And it might be, even if they perhaps didn't believe that they could send it successfully and it would strike, it would show, you know what, we're not going to discount anything potentially happening or us striking anything in particular, which again circles back to the question earlier as to whether the UK should be concerned about being on the striking map. The messaging from President Donald Trump right now is confusing, to put it mildly. He has most recently stated that he believed that the war was won and that they had been victorious. However, I think we're still a very long way off before any claim of victory can be certainly stated. And I think one's also got to question, what does victory actually look like? So there is a big question mark over President Donald Trump's recent statements, and that I would hope there was someone who was erring him to be on the side of caution, because each time he makes a bold claim and Iran counters that by sending a deluge of armaments into either the Gulf states or to US assets, or for this matter now, UK assets, then it undermines his credibility in those statements. And how can we believe those statements when we can see with our own eyes that the war is certainly not won as yet? There's a couple of interesting dynamics in terms of the validity of Keir Starmer's refusal to assist, who are our strongest allies. And although I believe we should support our allies, they have supported us historically, and our relationship, not only militarily, but also economically, is essential to maintain in the best good faith possible. That there are some question marks over the fact that we refusing to support could also be based on a dimension that looks towards, although very few people are talking about it, of boots on the ground in Iran. Now, my personal feeling is that to establish any kind of democratic infrastructure within Iraq, and that is obviously conditional to the IRGC key members conceding and surrendering, that the only way that that democratic infrastructure can be put in place would be with some kind of peacekeeping capability. Now, this is not something that the UN would be willing to do, and if the US was going to do it, this strikes a very difficult chord for Donald Trump, as politically, I think it could be massively detrimental to him and his current term, and certainly the future of any future terms that he may have as president. So Keir Starmer, in some defense, may be resistant until there is greater clarity as to whether this does escalate to troops on the ground. Because if we have signed up fully, that would mean UK would need to commit troops to the ground as well. And is that something that we have the appetite for?